Welcome to TPMvids Disney Beat, where we talk about all things Disney. If you're new to the channel and like what you see, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Disney on Ice has been entertaining audiences for over 40 years, and it's become a worldwide phenomenon. Having performed in 68 countries, it's now a tradition in many cities across the globe.
Have you ever seen Disney on Ice?
Oh, every year.
Brisbane families are flocking to Disney on Ice.
Dello spettacolo Disney on Ice.
En el estreno de Disney on Ice.
Disney on Ice? No.
Just to Disney on Ice.
Lo spettacolo Disney on Ice.
Die sensationelle Show für die ganze Familie.
Disney sur glace présente.
Disney on Ice presents
Worlds of Enchantment.
Passport to Adventure.
Mickey's Search Party.
Dare to Dream. And this is a dream of mine, y'all.
Disney on Ice!
Some people may never make it to a Disney theme park, so Disney on Ice will be the only way they see Mickey Mouse or any Disney character. Disney has always been a big part of pop culture, but how did this Disney on Ice phenomenon come to be? Well, Disney characters in ice shows go back over 75 years beginning in the 1940s. But it wasn't always a success. Disney has never produced any ice show themselves, and when they tried their own arena show, it was a disaster. So let's explore Disney's Ice Age, a frozen history to the success of Disney on Ice. Well before Mickey was skating in hockey arenas, he made his ice skating debut in September of 1935. It was an animated short coincidentally called On Ice. Walt Disney was actually quite fond of ice skating himself. In January of 1935, Walt Disney and his wife Lillian learned to ice skate at Yosemite National Park in California. Walt really enjoyed it, so he brought this new hobby into his animated films. You could say Mickey and Minnie in On Ice are really Walt and Lillian just 8 months earlier.
Get the cinch! Watch me!
The ice skating motif would later continue into many other animated films, most famously with Bambi in 1942. While Disney characters were skating on film, ice shows were a brand new entertainment industry gaining popularity. In 1936, two skaters from Minnesota named Oscar Johnson and Eddie Shipstad formed the Ice Follies. They were recreational skaters known for their comedy skating routine, and the Ice Follies was more of like a vaudeville revue show on ice. In November of 1936, the Ice Follies made their debut, and it was at that moment the idea of a touring ice show was born. It was a slippery slope for the first couple months, but by the end of their first season, they found their stride. The Ice Follies was a success. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 1936. Duquesne Gardens was the local hockey arena operated by a man named John H. Harris. Due to the effects of the Great Depression, it was a challenge filling the entire arena with hockey fans. So, in an attempt to sell more tickets, Harris hired three-time Olympic figure skating champion Sonja Henie to entertain the audience during periods. When Harris announced she would be performing, more people bought tickets. It got to a point where spectators were coming to the hockey game just to see Sonja perform. Harris was on to something. As the years went on, he also began to notice the Ice Follies were selling really well. Their show found the best formula that combined figure skating with theater, music, choreography, comedy, and elaborate props and costumes. There is always room for competition in any market. So, with the success of his halftime skating shows, John H. Harris formed his own Ice Spectacular. He combined the words ice and escapades, and just like that, the Ice Capades were born. They officially kicked off their first season at Duquesne Gardens in November of 1941, where it received rave reviews. Through the 1940s, both the Ice Capades and Ice Follies continued to see success. September of 1945 marked the end of World War II. So more than ever, America just wanted to laugh and be entertained. The ice shows were known for their large-scale production numbers, but in between acts, variety performers would fill the gaps and give audiences a laugh. A popular skating variety act was a comedy duo dressed as a four-legged animal. The shows always tried to incorporate pop culture references wherever they could. So in 1946, with permission from Walt Disney Studios, the Ice Follies debuted Walt Disney's Pluto. This was the very first time one of Walt Disney's characters could be seen live on ice. For the 1947 season, the same duo allowed Dumbo to fly off the screen. And this was the very first Dumbo costume to ever exist. Lastly, in 1948, a more obscure Disney character, Ferdinand the Bull, made his ice skating debut. Ferdinand was the star of a short Disney released in 1938, but also made a small cameo in the 1947 feature film Fun and Fancy Free. In this rare Ice Follies footage from 1948, you can see what this two-person animal act entailed. The performers were recreating the bull chase scene from the short, and it looked like the crowd was eating it up. These first appearances of Disney characters in the Ice Follies are never acknowledged and mentioned anywhere by Disney. It's really ironic considering the future of where their ice shows would take them. As the 1940s were progressing, the movie musical genre was flourishing. To stay relevant with the times, Ice Capades president John Harris wanted to incorporate more operettas and movie musicals into his ice shows, a main half-hour segment to tell one complete story. So in late 1947, Harris approached Walt Disney. The result was an agreement that would allow the Ice Capades to produce a condensed version of the animated feature film Snow White. It debuted for the Ice Capades' 9th season, which ran from 1948 to 1949. U.S. figure skating champion Donna Atwood played the title role of Snow White, but this wasn't Donna's first time working with Disney. She was hired by Walt Disney Productions to be the skating model for Thumper and Bambi. Animators watched Donna figure skate and brought her ease and agility into Thumper's animation. Now, just like Bambi's success, the Ice Capades Snow White was a huge success, and it was the beginning of a partnership with Disney that would last more than a decade. For the 10th anniversary season in 1950, the Ice Capades debuted a brand new segment called Walt Disney's Toy Shop. Here, Mickey and his friends took to the ice in an all-new original story. But more importantly, this was Mickey and Minnie's first appearance live on ice. In this rare footage from Walt Disney's Toy Shop, you can see how the characters' mouths were articulated, which is an incredible innovation and achievement for the time. Walt Disney regularly attended performances of the Ice Capades. He wanted to ensure the integrity of his beloved characters was up to standards. Walt developed a great relationship with John Harris and the Ice Capades. In 1951, Chip and Dale were briefly featured in a segment. Then in 1952, Disney's Cinderella was added to the program, and it had everything from Jack and Gus to Cinderella in a royal carriage. The segment was such a hit that it was also part of the 1953 season. Then in 1954 and 55, Harris brought back Snow White. The Disney segments would always be a selling point for the Ice Capades. By using Disney's name, they were able to sell out stadiums across North America, and Disney characters were reaching millions of people. Now, Disney was already heavily in the spotlight with the construction of Disneyland well underway, but the Ice Capades would save Walt Disney when he least expected it. Disneyland was set to open on July 17, 1955, and Walt and his team were working tirelessly to get the park completed on time. Cast members were hired to operate the rides and work in the shops, but Walt overlooked one small detail. He wanted to have his beloved characters with him on opening day, but there was a problem. The Walt Disney Company didn't own any of their own character costumes. Walt was in a real bind since there wasn't enough time to have costumes made. The only solution was to borrow the Ice Capades costumes. He asked John Harris for a favor, then Mickey and Minnie plus many of their friends were at Disneyland on opening day because of the Ice Capades. Thankfully, most of the Disney characters were not being used for the current Ice Capades season, plus performances didn't begin until a couple weeks later. The Ice Capades were Walt Disney's saving grace. For the next 3 years, the costumes would make occasional appearances at Disneyland when they weren't busy skating. To promote Walt's new theme park, the 1956-57 Ice Capades season debuted a brand new segment called Disneyland. It was the greatest show on ice. The Ice Capades were going strong into the late 50s, featuring even more Disney characters. There was the Hippo Ballet from Fantasia in the 1958 season, Then the 1959 season had a brand new reimagining of Snow White, marking the 5th time Harris presented this Disney story on ice. For the 22nd season from 1961 to 62, another original show debuted called Disneyrama, featuring many Disney characters that have been seen in past seasons, including Snow White, Cinderella, along with some dancing mice. It even had some ice skating mushrooms and castles. But then, a drastic change happened. In May of 1963, John Harris sold the Ice Capades to Metro Media, and they never worked with Disney again. They later signed a deal with Hanna-Barbera in 1967, and that was officially the end of Disney's partnership with the Ice Capades. Since the 1964 New York World's Fair had also ended, Disney was eager to find another accessible outlet to showcase their characters. At this point, Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color was on NBC. So Disney teamed up with NBC to produce an arena-style show. NBC provided the finances, and Disney took charge of the creatives. After a year of planning, the result was Disney on Parade, which made its official debut on Christmas Day, 1969 in Chicago, Illinois.
Disney on Parade, with over 100 favorite Disney characters. Mickey Mouse and all his friends, adventurous Pinocchio, Goofy and Herbie the Love Bug. Comedy and musical fun on stage for the whole family.
This extravaganza of Disney characters was pretty much what you'd see in the Ice Capades minus the ice. But Disney on Parade was far from a success. First of all, the Ice Capades and Ice Follies had the best dates booked in all the premier venues across North America. Secondly, the first couple shows ran over 3 hours. It had 130 cast members, plus it required 40 trucks to transport everything from city to city. It was a logistical mess. At this point, Disney had no experience producing live, large-scale theatrical productions. After the first season, NBC was worried the show would be a financial failure, so they brought in producer and director Michael Grilikis. He saved the show. Michael reduced the cast size, restaged scenes that weren't working, trimmed down the runtime and size of the set, plus managed to fit everything into 12 trucks. In late 1970, they relaunched the show.
Presenting now, the star of Disney on Parade, Mr. Mickey Mouse.
The new and improved Disney on Parade was a hit. The show was impressive, bigger than any ice show in the past, and it featured a lot of innovative ways to bring the Disney magic to life. With a total of 4 different editions, Disney on Parade toured until 1976. At some points, there were even 4 different companies at one time, which would allow the show to travel to South America, Australia, England, and Japan. Audiences adored Disney on Parade, and it was high-quality family entertainment. Ultimately, the financial challenges were too great for it to continue any further. It was not a financial success in the eyes of the executives, but there were other arena tours in the 70s that were. The Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus was a very popular touring arena show in the 1970s. In 1967, the circus had been purchased by a man named Irvin Feld, but then he sold it to Mattel in 1971 for $50 million in Mattel stock. Mattel kept Irvin Feld on to manage the show, and that's when he brought in his son Kenneth Feld to help produce. They formed Irvin and Kenneth Feld Productions under Mattel Entertainment, and these showmen were always looking for their next project. They had their eye on ice shows, and in 1979, there was an opportunity to purchase the Ice Follies. On behalf of Mattel, Irvin and Kenneth sealed the deal and purchased the Ice Follies for $12 million. But that deal also included another ice show called Holiday on Ice. It had been around since 1942. Now they had 2 different ice shows in their portfolio. But as they toured them around America, the Felds noticed something. It was an older audience. It was like seeing a matinee of a Broadway show on a Wednesday afternoon. Ice shows by this time were so tied to amateur skating and competitions that they were lacking the show and spectacle aspect. So the Felds brainstormed ways they could attract younger audiences. That's when Kenneth Feld had an idea.
I wanted to really put together in one of our shows a 20-minute segment with the Disney characters and stories, and that would be it, and it'd be a great marketing tool for us.
In 1980, Kenneth approached Disney, who initially turned down the proposal. Disney didn't want to be mixed in with another show. Their characters and stories were too developed as a brand. This was not the age of the Ice Capades anymore. So to try and avoid complete rejection, in the spur of the moment, Kenneth Feld suggested a full show dedicated to just Disney characters. Without hesitation, Disney said yes. But this was a huge risk for Feld. They had never created an ice show that told one complete story, and they weren't as familiar with the Disney culture as they should have been. After collecting themselves, they came up with a mission. They wanted to create a show that incorporated the most Disney characters you could see outside the theme parks. They wanted to maintain the integrity of figure skating while creating a spectacle that would entertain the entire family. The result was Walt Disney Productions' World on Ice. The premise of the show followed Pinocchio and Geppetto on an adventure to find each other.
And whatever you do, watch out for that sly old fox fowl fellow.
During their journey, they'd run into many familiar characters from around the world. It explored films like The Jungle Book, Saludos Amigos, and Zorro. It featured the country bears and the Disney princesses, and they even brought their experience with the circus into an elaborate Dumbo segment. It was truly a spectacle, to say the least. The show officially opened on July 14th, 1981 in New Jersey. Sitting in the audience that night was Diane Disney Miller, Walt Disney's daughter.
She was there, and I sat with her on that opening night, and I turned around at the end of the show, and we had literally every character on the ice, and I could see the tears coming down. And she turned to me and she said, "My father would have loved this."
Irvin and Kenneth Feld cracked the formula. They had a hit. Ice Follies was the first ice show to put a Disney character on ice. And now, over 30 years later, they were back, bigger than ever. In 1982, Mattel sold the Ringling Brothers plus Ice Follies and Holiday on Ice to Feld for $22.8 million. The Feld team decided focus should be solely on the Disney ice shows, and they retired Ice Follies and Holiday on Ice as we once knew them. They got to working on their next production, which was Walt Disney's Great Ice Odyssey. It debuted in 1982 and was another huge success. Variety magazine declared these new Disney ice shows as a renewed and exciting career for the ice show industry. In doing this, Feld managed to keep the integrity of figure skating in their shows by hiring Olympic figure skaters.
Hi, I'm Linda Fradiani. Winning a silver medal in the Winter Olympics was the thrill of a lifetime, but now I'm skating Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom on ice, and it's just like a dream come true.
Feld Entertainment was actually on a year-to-year contract with Disney. The shows were going well, but there was always uncertainty if Disney would renew. In 1984, Michael Eisner became the CEO of the Walt Disney Company. He began taking meetings with all the companies Disney had license agreements with, including the Disney ice shows. So when Feld sat down with Eisner, he was a little stunned.
And one of the first things he said to me when I met him was, "Why are we in the ice show business?"
It turned out Michael Eisner had never seen Walt Disney World on ice. So Kenneth invited him to a performance the following month. Then Eisner saw what all the buzz was about. When it came time to negotiate a new contract, Feld wanted a bit more security and asked for a 5-year contract. Michael Eisner agreed, but with one stipulation: they'd take the Disney ice shows internationally. Feld signed the deal, and in 1986, Happy Birthday Donald Duck debuted in Japan. Feld Entertainment was becoming the leader of arena ice shows. They continued to work closely with Disney, producing a new show every year. Once the Disney Renaissance era began with Disney's animated films in the 90s, it created a synergy never seen before on ice. In 1992, they created an entire show with Beauty and the Beast. In 93, they did the same with Aladdin. 96, it was Pocahontas. And in 1997, they brought Hercules to the ice as well as Toy Story, the first ever Pixar film on ice. From this point on, it was officially called Disney on Ice. These ice spectaculars were resonating with audiences, selling out arenas everywhere. By the mid-90s, Disney on Ice was so popular that Feld Entertainment had up to 8 separate units touring the world at one time. As Disney continued to release new animated films, Feld Entertainment would keep their shows updated. They'd bring new Disney characters to life using the most advanced technology available, making sure the shows were as relevant as possible. While the world was experiencing Frozen fever, in September of 2014, they debuted one of the most fitting productions on ice, Frozen. It was the 34th Disney on Ice production, and just like the film, it was a smash hit. More recently, Disney on Ice has featured characters from Moana and Coco, and you can't forget Mickey Mouse. He's been seen in every single Disney on Ice show since 1981. Today, Feld Entertainment is based out of a 600,000 square foot facility in Ellenton, Florida, just south of Tampa Bay. They continue to transform arenas around the world into a stage that brings the Disney magic to life in more innovative ways than ever. These dazzling ice spectaculars might be the only live Disney experience that's ever accessible to some people. So as long as there's Disney magic in the world, there will always be a place for Disney on Ice. So have you ever been to Disney on Ice? What was the first show you ever saw? I'd love to know. Leave a comment down below to start a conversation, and don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video.